You want a craft room tour? You got a craft room tour. Just, you know, after like 3 weeks of me frantically tidying up in here because it was kind of a disaster. Thanks for the motivation. So in week 1, you had the pleasure of watching me throw away a load of junk, mill around aimlessly, pull yarn off shelves and throw it on the floor and stamp around feeling sorry for myself due to being poorly. Then last time, we dealt with a storage solution for all of my cross-stitch stuff, which, oh my god, I am still so chuffed with this, I cannot believe how pretty it is. All that remained was to decide where everything else should go. Now here's a question for you. When you get home from a big shop, multiple bags full of groceries, do you A, take things out of the bags and put them away immediately, or B, take them out of the bags, put them onto the kitchen worktop, sort them into piles, and then put them away? Well, as my constantly annoyed by this ex-boyfriend could attest, I am firmly in Camp B. I can't put things away without sorting them into piles first. I don't know why. So anyway, that's how we ended up with this. I know, right? It looks bad, but you just have to trust the process. I got to work sorting through the pile, throwing away a load of stuff that I didn't throw away last time I did this, but suddenly was able to part with the second time around, and getting everything vaguely into the 3 piles I promised you last time. Things I need regular access to, things I need occasional access to, and things I don't need to be in here at all. From there it was a question of trial and error, a lot of standing around looking pensive and deciding what might fit where, trying to figure out what to use the second undershelf basket for. That won't fit. Deciding what exactly should go in some of the basic white baskets I bought last time. Nope, that won't fit either. I went for a middle ground in between efficiency and looking good on camera, because I am only human and I'd like to have a nice background in videos, so sue me, I guess. The idea was to get the basic essentials into the shelves, desk drawers and cupboard wherever made the most sense, and then sort of fill the rest of the space with yarn. However, I didn't want to pack everything absolutely full if it could be avoided, because what's the point of doing all this if next time I buy any supplies, it turns out we're at max capacity already. That's how I got into this mess in the first place, so we're definitely going to want room to grow. Long story short, a few finishing touches and the makeover was complete. Yes, it was totally that easy and involved no drama and definitely not days and days on end of wading through piles of yarn all over the floor. Okay, time for the tour! The first thing you see on walking into this room is the his and hers gaming setup, which hasn't changed a whole ton, but it is much tidier. Previously, this drawer was a tangle of random wires and boxes that I'd kept for no reason. And this other drawer was a combination of bits of spare cross-stitch fabric, project bags, and false nails for some reason. Now I've made it a home for all of my art supplies that were previously taking up room on the shelf and not really being used very often. I bought most of these for university when I went back to do a degree a few years ago, and I've really not used most of them since. The exceptions being these pens, which I use all the time. But I am always telling myself I'll finally learn to art, so if I do, I've got everything I need here. There's a bit of art overflow in here, but as you can see, I gave in and I gave myself a nail basket. I do actually end up sitting here to put falsies on to record videos quite often, so I figured I'd just go with it. And it'll also serve as a place for random bits and pieces like bobby pins, etc. that I know they would just start collecting on the desk again if I didn't give them a home. Rest of this is just wires, electronics, my sound mixer in the back there. But I know where everything is, which is nice. There's a ton more space underneath my desk now because since we have a proper studio light, we don't need to keep the light box set up all the time, so it's actually collapsed now in its little bag here. These drawers were overall fine, but there was kind of a teetering pile of rubbish accumulating on top. So as you can see, teetering pile of rubbish is now gone and I can actually roll this out and use it as a table, which was the original plan when we bought it. Inside, it's just vaguely camera video related things and packaging materials and really nothing super exciting, but it's just good for all of this to have a home because it's the sort of stuff that gets out of control fast. Dave's version of these drawers are much more exciting. Meet Dicetron. Everything the discerning resin artist needs to make pretty stuff in a self-contained trolley that can be rolled out and put next to the table as needed. Also, you should totally check out the full version of this reel that Dave made for the Luckbringers Instagram account because hardly anyone watched it and I think that's a shame. These ugly cardboard boxes down here are just dice stuff, basically. New things we've had to buy that we don't quite have a place for yet, but I'm sure something will sort itself out. And under there is the sparkle box, which we hooked up with UV lights to help cure 3D printed bits and pieces. And that is basically this side of the room. Okay, over on this side of the room is our retro gaming collection. And yes, when I say our, I do mostly mean Dave's, but you'd be surprised by how much of this is mine. When you combine households, you naturally end up with a surplus of Game Boys and Super Nintendos, right? This has mostly been left as is during the redo because frankly, what else can you do? This cupboard though. Oof. I don't think I showed you a before picture of in here because I was actually ashamed, but suffice to say, if you tried to take anything out, everything else avalanched. So now there's a ton more space, which is great because what were we saying about needing room to grow? In the meantime, it's where I've hidden awkward things like these dowels or this clay car, which was a project at uni and I came second and I'm just weirdly proud of it, so the car stays. I also have all of this encaustic art stuff that I was gifted by Morty of Mad Morty for my birthday this year. I still haven't had a chance to play with it and I feel quite bad about that, but I'm thinking maybe I can use it to make Christmas cards or something? We'll see. Just ignore the pile of COVID tests there. It is the 2020s after all. You might recall seeing this cardboard box on the floor in the previous video. It had been sitting there for about 5 months, just with a load of knitting projects stuffed in it that didn't really have anywhere else to go. So I thought instead of buying a pretty new plastic box to fit in here, this cardboard box fits perfectly. I may as well just use that. This bad boy can fit so much fabric in it. This is all my sewing stash that I don't have plans for or particularly have a need to see on display. It's all together, I know where it is, but it's also out of the way and not all stuck in an overstuffed shelf like it was before. And this box here hasn't been touched. This is my Eurovision and Sentimental Things box, which is totally a kind of box. I've got my Eurovision flags ready to go, any tickets or holiday souvenirs etc. get put in here for later sorting, and I keep my first ever knitting, crochet and cross-stitch projects here too, because it feels like I'm always taking photos of them for those Instagram monthly prompt things. Plus, I just like knowing they're safe. Down here at the bottom is actually a folder of vintage knitting patterns that my grandma sent to me. I need to make some time to look through that properly one day and see if it includes a pattern for the cardigan she made me as a kid. The folder is surprisingly heavy though, so yeah, that just lives down there for now. This last basket was freed up from downstairs. It's currently holding a load of knitting and crochet projects that I need to frog, as is this bag here. But once that's done, I guess I can use it for something else. Or more likely, for the yarn that results from all of that frogging. So, moving on. Look at how tidy this corner is now. Turns out removing those big bits of sofa bed foam actually made quite a big difference. I can even freely spin the mirror and access the shelves around the back, as God intended. We talked last time about this mirror cupboard and what to do with it. When I first got it, the plan was to actually use all of these hooks and things for my hanging floss storage. However, when I decided to go with quite long strands, it seemed like that probably wouldn't work very well and would look a mess, so I changed tack. This does mean I don't have much of a use for this space right now, but again, it's room to grow. You can see I've been testing hanging embroidery hoops in there. It doesn't work very well, but I'll keep trying things and just see what sticks. As for those shelves, again, space. I'm sure this will fill up in no time at all, but right now it feels like there's so much room for activities. You can just ignore the stuff on the bottom. That's Warhammer bits and pieces that's due to go up on eBay, so won't be staying there permanently. And otherwise, what's our motto? Room to grow. Alright, you already briefly saw my repurposed shoe organizer here on the back of the door. It's not the prettiest thing, but it holds a ton. All of my needle felting stuff is here, from the big boys at the top that barely fit but it'll do, to these tiny bags of colour coordinated fluff that I got in a cheap beginner kit, and then of course some of the other pockets hold more random bits and pieces that you just need regular access to, like you always need to know where your ball of string is, am I right? Eventually I will upgrade this to something that looks a lot better, but honestly it's just so functional. Love it. Remember, if you enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up to help other people find it too. And if you're enjoying the vaguely chaotic multi-craftual vibes, I have a lot more where those came from, so you may as well subscribe. And now we move on to the bit you've all been waiting for, the actual craft shelves. This side of the room is looking a lot different, I would say. First thing is that overall it's a lot less cluttered. The overstuffed bags and boxes on top of the shelves have been mostly cleared away, and that freed up an actual place for that second studio light to live. Yeah, it's not pretty, but we've been keeping that bag on the floor and just moving it around for like 5 months, so this is a big relief. There are a few other bits and bobs up there, but nothing like the amount of mess that was there before. Someone did try and tactfully point out last time that maybe giving up so much floor space to a dress form that isn't even my size was a bad idea, and yes, I do agree. But the dress form stays, sorry. I like it, and I do actually use it when I'm sewing and stuff, so if I can make it work, I'll make it work. The novelty hats that she was wearing, on the other hand, they're going to live in the attic now, since they're only really needed once a year and keeping them here was clearly insane. So, the craft table. Obviously kind of the centre point of the room activities-wise. This is a Norden gate leg table from IKEA. The idea is it can be collapsed like this when we need the space, either because I'm recording in here or we have people staying over on the airbed or whatever it might be. Or we can have one side up for small projects like filming an overhead tutorial or doing resin work, or we can pull it out and have both sides up for things like sewing projects. It's really great, but the problem is obviously it can block some of these shelves behind it, and also having it pushed up against the shelves like this prevents access to these drawers on the other side. I've got to admit, I'm very physically weak. So I can move this table easily enough to get in behind it, but if we stuffed these drawers full of heavy stuff, I probably couldn't. This is a long-winded way of explaining why we've agreed to only put really lightweight things in here, which definitely limits how useful the drawers can be. At the moment, after the clear out, we have some dice-related things in here, cloths and spray bottles and a nail lamp for curing emergency UV resin fixes. And then further down, I have my ball winder because I wind at the table, so that makes sense. And honestly, that's about it. What's our mantra? Room to grow. So, onto the shelves themselves, which I'm sure you've had a good look at by now, but I'm going to explain in excruciating detail anyway. Let's start at the top. This basket here is kind of miscellaneous craft overflow. It's all very lightweight items so that I can pull it down from this top shelf easily. So things like spare polyfill, empty project bags, just that kind of stuff. This white basket is where I've collected any knitting needles, crochet hooks, blocking wires, test tubes of tapestry needles, basically anything along those lines that I've collected while tidying up. My main set of crochet hooks live in my big project bag downstairs, and ever since getting interchangeable needles, I very rarely use these old ones. So this is kind of a messy pile, but it's contained, it's on a theme, and it has a specific place. Also, I guess I put the Starship Enterprise in here. Never know when you're going to need a Starship Enterprise. These magazine files were unnecessarily stuffed full of packaging that I refused to throw away, and now I have to say they're kind of pointlessly empty, but I'm sure I'll find more things to go in them soon. At the moment, I have kind of paper craft and origami in here. I have some failed laser cutting experiments that I'll probably throw away, but I'm just not quite there yet. And in here, I have all of the branded stuff for Luckbringers dice, so our stickers, business cards, that kind of thing. Then a couple of ring binders for personal stuff, and also invoices and accounts, that sort of thing for Luckbringers. All very adult and grown up, and totally what you expected from me, I'm sure. And then, moving down, we have the fun shelf. And I think you can probably already guess how much I love this. It doesn't look super efficient, I'll give you that, but honestly there's quite a lot of otherwise awkward stuff finding a home here, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Also, it gives me an interesting video backdrop, which is a nice bonus. So obviously, floss storage. We looked at this in great detail in my last video. These undershelf hooks came with a sort of suction cup to fasten them in place, but I realised if I leave them off, yes, I do have to be a bit careful when I'm pulling out ring binders and such from the shelf above, but look what I can do. I can just slide these out to access the rings further back. Honestly, I thought that was going to be the big annoyance with this system, trying to get to the ones round back, but it seems to have worked itself out. Also, there's a random tin whistle here, because that's a totally natural combination of things to store together. I don't know, it made sense to me at the time. The undershelf basket is brilliant as well. The fabric and unfinished pieces in here were all over the house, and now they're just so tidy. Since I'd gone mad for hanging stuff, I figured, what's a bit more? You all know how much I love sock yarn, so I used the rings I'd bought for floss drops to hang off the bottom of this basket. My one issue here is this yarn in the middle, which was dyed specially for me as part of Reddit's craft exchange last Christmas. It's quite heavy, and I'm just a little bit concerned about the weight on the basket. What I might do is add a command hook back here just to take some of the weight of that shelf. Anyway, I really like how that worked out, so hooray. Still got my bobbin box, of course. I wonder how long it's going to take for me to work through all of that so that all of my floss is on drops. I'll keep you posted. Now, I don't know about you, but I found it had all of these little bits that were just everywhere and didn't really have a place. Spare needles and threaders, beads, jewellery findings, you get the idea. Honestly, this teeny tiny set of drawers is the thing I was most wary about spending money on, but I'm amazed at what a difference it's made. I've got my pretty yarn bowl that Dave got me last Christmas. It's seen very little use as an actual yarn bowl, but quite a lot of use as a bowl of miscellaneous crafts. Right now, it's holding my needle minders. Ooh. So, okay, let's talk about the head. This was originally a gift back when I was designing knit and crochet patterns and needed to take nice photos. It then lived downstairs for a few years, sporting our PSVR helmet. My original plan for this shelf was to have some kind of see-through stackable boxes over here, but honestly, having somewhere this thing actually fits is such a relief. It will show up in videos, I think, depending how I angle the camera, but will live. And then somewhat haphazardly stuffed in at the side here, in a way that only makes sense to me, my A3 and coloured sheets of cardboard and some sheet music from Final Fantasy X. Yeah. Not the prettiest setup in the world, but much easier to get at what I need than the previous arrangement was, and I use this cardboard quite a lot, so that'll save me a fair bit of hassle over time. Obviously, I have my few special personal bits here too. The trophy from the one time I managed to win our fantasy football league, my pumpkin, Biscornu, and of course ghost friend Sebastian, the Packers-themed dice that Dave made me for Christmas, and a souvenir thimble from the Penis Museum in Reykjavik. Yep, you heard me. These are a couple of publications I got free copies of because I had a featured pattern in there. Yeah, that's my hat. I made that. It really didn't pay very well, but obviously it was quite exciting at the time. And then you might know a couple of years back I started selling cup cozies on Etsy. I sold an absolute ton of the things on the run-up to Christmas 2020, and I was absolutely rushed off my feet trying to make them on demand. So, of course, last year I was sensible and pre-made a load of them. Crickets. I probably need to look at the listing and update some stuff this year to try and get them moving again, but anyway, I have all of my cotton yarns I was using to make these neatly collected here. Then, as well as the cozies themselves, I have half-used balls of yarn in here too. The idea is if I have a designated place for the half-used balls, they won't end up just all over the living room. I don't know if that's going to work out in practice, but I'll let you know. And who doesn't need a bright yellow wire basket full of yarn? I don't know, I just thought this would be fun. Okay, this weirdly small shelf here is just bits of yarn that I didn't necessarily want to be front and center on display. It looks a bit dinky having this tiny shelf, but it's extra storage space I wouldn't have had, so it's fine by me. Which brings us all the way to the bottom, my ridiculously hefty sewing machine that, honestly, I struggle to even lift. It is so big. And then a bit of a random assortment of stuff over here because nobody but me sees this corner, so it really doesn't matter. Air dry clay. My switch case, which probably could have gone in the electronics drawer, but I didn't think to move it before I recorded, so whatever. This shoebox has my polymer clay and related tools, my label maker, and those new hole punches that I got for the floss drops. The combo makes sense to me, and that's what matters. Then this second shoebox, the eagle-eyed of you might recognise as the ever-present box of homemade soaps, which I'm happy to say a year and a half after I made some of these, still smells amazing. I really need to find more people to gift soaps to though. Okay, wow, that was a very detailed tour of some shelves, wasn't it? I'll try and go faster through the second half. So, continuing round the bottom. This is my sewing box, which I think was gifted to me by my boyfriend's mum when we were like 15, so I've had this for a long time. There's all sorts in here. It does need properly organising because I have a habit of just throwing stuff onto this top section, but underneath it's holding bags of ribbons, all of my interfacing, batting and muslin, a box of threads, etc, etc. Unfortunately, it didn't fit on the same shelf as my sewing machine because this thing is just huge. So it can be a little bit awkward having to crouch under the table to slide this out, but it's not too bad. At the other side, full unopened balls of acrylic and cotton yarn. Because I struggle to keep track of what I own acrylic-wise and really want to start using some of it up on purpose next year, so every time I find another ball hiding somewhere around the house, I'm putting it in there. The big messy half-used balls of this stuff I'm still keeping in those crates on top of our wardrobe. Sorting through those will be a whole other project, but at least for now there's an assigned place. This baby up here is my true everything box. As you can see, it's usually hiding behind the table, so I don't mind the slight amount of mess given how much easier it makes it to find things. Resin ghost stuff from Halloween last year. I have no idea where these came from. Oh, and here's a jigsaw that Dave's sister got me for a Secret Santa years ago. Not strictly a craft supply there, but never mind. The blue tub is actually just overflow bathroom storage because our bathroom is stupid small. You don't want to see in there. There are sanitary products in there. Apologies to any viewers who just fainted at the very thought. And I also have my needle felting mat down here just because that's the only place it would fit. Next we have the dice shelf. Okay, one of the dice shelves, since the messy stuff is all over there. But we've got our actual dice stock, our collection of masters, and then just some envelopes for easy packaging at the table. These gift boxes seemed like a good idea presentation-wise, but it turns out they take up quite a bit of space. And these two 3D printed templates back here are for marking out the foam inserts in the boxes so Dave can very manfully hammer holes in them like so. Of course, I wasn't just going to have a big black wall of gift boxes in my video background, so here's a random jar of chunky D20s we made, and a pen holder to brighten things up. The only things not in reach are the branded stickers and cards and things, but I'm thinking I might get another undershelf basket and put it here, so all the Luckbringers dice can just stay together. Next, welcome to the sewing shelf. This is probably the least populated shelf, but I figured it was annoying me having that really overstuffed fabric stash before, and really there's very little of it that I have immediate plans or strong feelings for. So I thought, why not just have that stuff on display? Then I'm able to keep this folder thing, which is holding all of my printed out sewing patterns. I figure probably I'll need to efficientize this more at some point and find a better place for it, but for now, yep, room to grow. More yarn! The recently purchased yarn that we saw in my autumn plans video has found a home downstairs in the baskets next to my couch. So since the practical stuff was taken care of, I could put the pretty stuff on here. This was mostly bought last September for a failed run at making products for Etsy, and I figure having this be on display might just give me that constant low-level feeling of guilt needed to push me into trying again. If not, it looks good. And it looks good because I took all of the pink and I put it elsewhere. That random pink I bought, that is so not me. I've put any in-use balls of these yarns into this shelf because basically if it's easier to grab a new ball than to check for one already on the go, I will do so. I'm incredibly lazy. And last but not least, the first basket up here is holding scrap yarns. Not all of my scrap yarns. Acrylic mostly has its own separate place now, as discussed, but this is sock yarns, merino yarns, anything that there's a decent enough chunk of left that I might be able to turn into something one day. And you can only yell at me for keeping these if you can honestly say you've never done the same. The other basket is very overstuffed and I need to finish up or sell or give away some things in here. Basically, it's things I've made and I'm making, but not personal things. Like, I have some cozies that haven't been packaged up, and ear warmers that need the buttons stitching on, and that hat from the cover of the magazine earlier. There's all sorts in there. Once I started actually collecting it together, I was kind of amazed at how much stuff I've made. That's definitely an ongoing project to sort out. And as much as I hate to end this tour on a it's not quite finished yet note, these are the little baskets and add-ons for the pegboard that we bought ages ago and still haven't decided where it's going to go, so at least they have a place for now. And maybe one day soon you'll see that pop up in a video background too. Okay, I feel like I've been talking for about a week. But hey, you can never accuse me of not going in depth enough. I know this wasn't one of those dramatic, I smashed down a wall and spent $20,000 on building my dream craft room that's bigger than a standard UK house type videos. But in my case, the basics were already there and all it needed was for me to take the time to actually think it through and figure out how we could best use this space. If you're interested, I've also broken down the cost. For the floss storage specifically, I spent £12 on the paper cutter, £11 on the hole punches, those were both from Hobbycraft, $8.99 for a pack of 3 of the undershelf hooks bought on Amazon, and $10.99 for 50 of those metal rings. I definitely didn't need 50 of those, but I figure I'll buy the big pack and I can definitely find more uses for them. So that's £42.98 on floss storage, although it would have been significantly less if I already owned the paper cutter and the hole punches, which I'm sure a lot of you already do. Then for the rest of it, I added £10.83 for 2 undershelf wire baskets, £11.33 for the teeny 9-drawer thing, both of those were from eBay, and £11 total for 5 generic white baskets which you can get from Asda. That comes to another £33.16 for a grand total of £76.14. I'm telling you the cost because, well, I think it's relevant, but also because I owe you a really big thank you. If you've watched my videos before, you probably got the impression that I'm extremely tight with money, so maybe you're surprised that I'm spending so much in one go. I know I'm kind of surprised. I will talk more about this in detail soon, but basically, thanks to all of your support over the last year and a bit, I managed to get monetized on YouTube recently. Obviously, the income on a small channel like mine is not a ton, but it's fair to say it's so far paid for a decent chunk of this. So this little room redo is kind of me celebrating that milestone and, yeah, treating myself. I hope nobody finds this £76 show of absolutely ostentatious wealth too offensive, and I'll be back to my frugal ways soon enough. But yes, thank you so much. It absolutely blows my mind that we've got to this point. I can't believe it. Okay, enough of me waffling. I'm sure you have other videos to watch. I'll be back soon with some more crafty nonsense, so in the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff. Bye!